Last week, we had an amazing conversation with Mark Organ. Today, we go deep on all the great business myths he busted. Welcome to Startup Different. This is the Startup Different podcast, hosted by successful entrepreneurs and brothers Dave and Chris Sinkinson. We're here to bust startup myths and give you the insights you need to help you reach your startup dreams. Hello, folks, and welcome to Startup Different. I'm Dave. He's the other Sinkinson. And today we're talking about an awesome interview we had with
incredible interview. Yeah.
Man, that dude is cool.
Yeah.
Also, his name is Chris. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. That's petty brotherly insults.
I joked with Mark before the show that he felt like he's the older brother I never had.
Yeah.
Because I'm the oldest in our family and he's a bit older than me, kind of went through school a few years ahead of me and had really interesting experiences. But yes, I wish Mark could be my adoptive older brother.
Yeah. This kind of makes me feel weird. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel about that as the youngest. Feels like I really dropped the ball or something.
He's a whole lot cooler than you.
No doubt. That guy is cool and so put together. It's interesting. So a lot of things were interesting about the discussion. And by the way, folks, I encourage you to go back and listen to the interview. It was awesome. So many important pieces of information. I mean, we're going to go into it a little bit today and talk about our thoughts, but I just found him really, really fascinating too, because he was like an extension of our journey. You know, he had actually we got our business to a certain point. He took it to a level up, and then maybe even another level after that. And he just knows so many famous entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. It was just a really interesting discussion.
One thing we learned as we were building our business is what worked for us when we had 5 employees didn't work anymore when we had 8 employees. And we kind of had to keep reinventing ourselves and adjusting the way we were operating our business. And it kind of felt like Mark just did that, but longer than we had to do it, because I think one of his businesses got up to about 250 employees, something like that, if I got that right. Yeah. So, he kind of had to keep doing that as he kept growing those businesses, which is really interesting. So I think we were doing the right things. It kind of reinforces that the way we were running our business probably made sense.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like with a lot of businesses, there's no perfect way to start and scale and then exit a business, but there are patterns. There are obviously we wouldn't be here. There wouldn't be a show if there wasn't something to it. But it was interesting to see how much overlap there was.
Yeah,
I just found that pretty surprising. Yeah. And one thing that I thought was really cool was so he mentioned sort of this regular touch point sort of piece that he would have with an all company meeting basically every day for 9 minutes.
Yeah, and
I thought that was really interesting because we used to do that too, like we mentioned in the interview. And I thought that the concept of this clear communication from the C-suite level, which is even in a company of hundreds of people, that's not a trivial thing to do, to have a clear line of sight to what's happening sort of with the customer.
This is one of my worst fears when we were running our business, that I was going to lose touch with what was actually happening, on the ground floor, out in the trenches, use whatever analogy you want here, but what was actually going on with our customers and how they were interacting with our product and kind of becoming out of touch with what was going on there. And I think his meeting was for that purpose, because he had times, I think he mentioned to us as well, that they had times where they started to have a lot of churn and they were kind of losing
That might have been after the interview. I can't remember. We actually kept talking to this guy for a while. But anyway, there was circumstances where they're having a lot of churn, right? Yeah,
right. Yeah. And so it reinforces that that's a really good thing to do, is to keep yourself grounded, keep yourself connected to your customers, and really know how your product is meeting or not meeting your customers' needs. So that was really reinforcing for me.
Hey, one thing that Chris and I have talked a lot about on this show is how easy it is for founders to build apps and automations with no-code tools. One of the most powerful tools out there is called Bubble. But even though Bubble is a no-code platform, it can get a little complicated to do things on your own. And so our sponsor today is an agency that's called Zero Code. That's ZeroQode, which is a top Bubble agency and that can help you build any web, mobile, or AI application, as well as automate your entire business using no-code and AI tools. Zero Code will help you build custom solutions, CRMs, custom dashboards, marketplaces, or internal tools to automate your business much faster and cheaper. However, if you want to try to build on Bubble yourself, Zero Code is also the biggest plugin builder for Bubble, and they have more than 700 plugins. Make sure you check them out. Discover the simplicity and power of no code and AI at zerocode.com. That's Zero Code and code with a Q. And now back to the show. Yeah. I think too, he spoke a lot about kind of like this like iterative improvement and having like without going specific to like the Eric Ries sort of lean startup side. He does talk a lot though about how like you're using this like scientific method, which I never really put together. That is effectively what is happening.
Yeah. What was it? OODA.
Yeah, this was definitely after the interview now.
Yeah. He mentioned this to us afterwards.
This I remember did not happen on camera.
I think this is the value of doing a debrief episode, is that some of these really interesting things that kind of come out after the interview, we can actually bring some of this stuff back into it after the fact. But he said the OODA loop, which was observe, orient, decide, act.
Yeah.
Okay. And he actually gave this really good story about how it was actually a fighter pilot from the Korean War in the U.S. Navy, I think it was, who kind of designed this. And he was, trying to use this to make 3 different loops through the OODA loop before the enemy had done even one.
Yeah.
And the enemy always found it really disorienting because that I'm gonna forget the words, but observe, orient, decide, act.
Yes.
You want to do that a lot of times. Okay. So you're continuously adjusting.
Because the enemy wouldn't have an idea of like what you were up to because you were a couple moves ahead.
Yeah.
You'd thought them out before they had a chance to think themselves out.
And I think when we think about our business and how we were running meetings, I always used to kind of get in trouble with our support team because I was kind of lurking in the support tickets and things like that.
We mentioned this on a previous episode.
Yeah. But I think what I was doing was I was observing. Okay. I think that was like the first step. And then I think as I noticed patterns, I was then orienting. I was like, okay, seems to be some pattern developing here. And then I make a decision. Hey, this is a thing in our software that everybody's tripping over. And then act, which would be, hey, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to go and eliminate it. I'm going to, automate it. I'm going to come up with some way that people don't trip over.
I mean, like he talked about it a little bit differently during the actual episode. He was talking about like having a hypothesis and like evaluating that hypothesis.
That's true.
And I think it was interesting because what you're saying here is you're applying it to kind of like your field of expertise.
Right.
But that kind of lesson could apply to your business in general.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. Now, and we talk about this in our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. And the one thing that we didn't really get a chance to tackle with him that maybe we can on a future episode is when you talk about this like this circumstance, this OODA loop, as you've referenced, or the hypothesis, and like you iteratively improve that. When we were talking about product innovation in the book, there's like diminishing returns to that process. There's a point where it's very valuable. It's less and less valuable as time goes on, and then to the point where it's not valuable anymore.
Right.
So what I kind of wondered with some of the points he was making was, when does that, we didn't hear about the big failures because he did reference them. He said he had some big misses too.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it was that process getting out of control at all, or you know what I mean? Like, how did that? What are the things to consider?
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say no.
Well, I don't know. Like,
I think honestly, like if you are constantly reevaluating things, I think it's when you stop doing that things start to fail.
You can get like, I think of the times when we mess things up.
Right.
Most of the time it was because we might have been doing these iterative loops, but the feedback we was getting was just like our own to ourselves.
Yeah.
Or perhaps to people who were just paying us lip service.
Yeah. Okay.
So like it can fail.
Yeah.
It's not a bulletproof process.
I think the other piece that he was really trying to get out there was that the surface area with your customer. Okay.
Right.
Increasing the surface area with your customer.
That's feedback is what he's got.
Right.
Like lots of feedback.
When I
touch
think
points, surface area, it's like old lingo, I think, for a lot of the same things today.
This is a question I wish I could ask Mark now. When he talks about surface area.
Mark, if you're listening right now, we need you to comment.
When you're talking about surface area, we had times where we had lots of surface area with like one client.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When he's talking about surface area, I think he's talking about lots of touch points with a lot of clients. Okay?
Yeah. I wonder how deliberate that is, you know?
Yeah. And maybe that might be the reason, like when you think about some of our products that didn't really work out so well, and I know there are a few that are probably coming up to mind.
Yeah.
It was a lot of surface area, but
One.
only with a single client. We didn't have a diverse set of perspectives.
That's interesting.
On that.
I think this actually goes back though to that initial touch point of having the communication flow from, you know, the C-suite down to the trenches, so to speak. Not to use too many war analogies, but because the way you get sort of like manifest aggregate customer advice or customer insight, I think is through your sales force. The sales force are the people who actually know what's happening in the market. It's not always a convenient truth, but it's the reality that they kind of have their finger on the pulse. They know when they go into a demo, after a couple of questions, they know the direction it's going to go. They could probably tell you why it will or will not work.
Yeah.
You know, pretty quickly. And that's the insight you're looking for. Oh, we have something with a feature that's not making it, you know, this, that, or the next thing. And I can't remember if this is during the interview or not, but remember he mentioned that they kind of evolved. Remember we had these small sort of scrum meeting in the morning.
Yeah.
It was just us and we'd have these quick little touch points. And then as we got bigger, we were having trouble doing it. It was just, there's too many people. And he mentioned how they went through this too. And they got so much bigger that they couldn't do it either. Yeah. And then they started to departmental highlights. And those highlights would have included stuff from like the salespeople saying, hey, these customers not working. So I guess my point here is that like, I don't know. Sometimes it felt like he was suggesting that he was going out and soliciting a lot of feedback, like personally from certain customers.
Yeah.
Other cases, though, I think the majority of cases, or when you reach a certain level of scale, that has to be coming from the sales force. And you have to have a mechanism to capture that.
Definitely. Like, I love talking to salespeople when we were building our products. Absolutely.
What?
Yeah, for sure. Of course, you know that.
That's true. You're pretty motivated.
Because they were like a proxy or like an aggregator of customer feedback.
But you have to be.
But you didn't like me talking to sales reps because you
build some crap that the thing is like it's not always. Sorry to our past sales reps. I love you.
By the way, I never built crap. Everything I built was
everything you built was good, but did it have market fit or was it cast a wide net? Like maybe not.
I've definitely had a few times where I burnt weekends building features.
So I guess this is my thing. Like it's tough to like parse. Here's a term for you. It's tough to parse all this feedback to figure out what's actually useful for the market. But if you're just looking for like a vast amount of feedback, then you're going to get it from your sales team.
Yep.
Now, for what it's worth, I think that the second group that might also be sort of in the loop was like a implementation team, or project manager or support
for sure.
Like those kind of like the operations group at any organization. They're also going to solicit some of that, but I do think it's almost like the market with salespeople is like forward looking, where like those are features that are coming that you might need or that competitors are doing. Whereas in your company, the operations team is going to give you the current shortcomings with your existing product as it is right now.
Good point. Very good point.
Right.
And this is why I loved our office hours meeting, or like our product escalations meeting, I guess would be the right term. But I love going into that as well, because you're absolutely right. This was like existing clients and where they were finding shortcomings with the product or where they wanted enhancements with the product. And I think there was like a default bias to just sort of like put it in the black hole. We're never going to do that kind of stuff. But I loved hearing that sort of stuff. And if I think, going back to, observe, orient, decide, act.
For something that didn't come up in the episode, you've referenced that quite a bit.
I like it. Might put it on a t-shirt or something.
I'm sure it exists.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I like that because I think, one of the things that I think software developers are pretty good at doing is pattern recognition. Okay. So you notice these things coming up again and again and again. And like, are you going to, orient yourself that, hey, this is an issue? Are you going to decide that, we're going to make this change to address it? And are you going to actually go out and make that happen, launch it out to production, all that sort of stuff. So I think, there's some really valuable learnings in what Mark was talking about. And I think that the way that you gather that feedback, it might come in through, a morning scrum meeting, or it might come in through a sales escalation meeting, or a product escalation meeting, or a support escalation meeting. But I think you need to be looking at those things and doing that pattern recognition.
So like a lot of it is about ideas, right? So those are ideas that you're getting from the market, ideas that you're getting from your customers pretty quickly. What I think is also kind of interesting was his myth, the myth that he chose.
Yeah.
Which was that you need to have this like amazing idea to be able, and actually, as I was thinking back, like who else said that? I think Marley actually said that.
Yeah.
A few episodes ago now, but, and it is, I always kind of feel a little weird about that myth, because on the one hand, I get what he's trying to say. You can do something better than someone else. My feeling is it's hard to enter that market. Like, to be clear, like you can do the same thing, but you still have to be disruptive. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't go into a market and compete with Google and do it like marginally better than Google. Like you'll just fail. Right. And so, but on the other hand, like, the better light bulb is like a totally legitimate way to build an awesome business. You know what I mean? Like I'm having trouble reconciling that.
I think thinking about the rest of the things that Mark said, he was also said how much he liked differentiation.
Yeah. Hey,
how important
how about
that
me
is.
getting that in the episode though,
Yeah,
right?
that was
was actually pretty sweet. I see you smiling. Producer Graham smiling back there.
We never got the big like gong or
yeah,
whatever
we need a gong. If you want a gong, let us know in the comments. But sorry.
So the idea though, it wasn't just it doesn't have to be this like killer idea. But whatever you do have to do it differently. You do have to have some sort of differentiation. So I think those are the two pieces.
I think on its face, that's like a kind of ridiculously simple piece of feedback though.
Yeah.
You've got to do it differently. Like, of course you do.
But I think there's a lot of people that are always looking for that like perfect thing that is so, nobody's ever thought of it as completely novel, is completely never been done, and is going to disrupt the world. And then somehow, once you launch it, there's not 10 competitors also doing the same thing.
I guess that's really the theory behind that idea, that concept that you're just suggesting, is that because no one else doing it, I'm more likely to be successful if I come out with it. Which like has got to be true in some cases. Yeah. Like Nike invented the modern running shoe. Nobody else was making running shoes. They made it with a Cuisinart or whatever in there.
Like there's a waffle iron, but yeah.
I think, does Cuisinart make waffle irons?
I have no idea.
It's kitchen art.
You're asking a guy that doesn't know how to cook anything.
That's true. We're all worried about you. But you know what I mean though. Like this didn't exist before, and they did it, but it's not like just like that was the reason they were the one. There's tons of hard work in there, and all the other bajillion decisions they had to make, and all the huge risks they had to take to become the company that they are now. And so it's almost just like, yeah, it's good to have an idea that is unique and interesting that can help, but it's one of many, many, many pieces to startup fame, startup success. For sure. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought it was interesting because I'm not sure how much I always buy that. Like I really do, like, do it differently. Yeah. But like in a disruptive way, like you can't just do it the same way.
Yeah.
And expect new results.
Definitely bought in on that. I think I co-authored a book about that.
Did you? Did you now?
Although I may reach out to Mark and see if he wants to co-author a book with me on something.
Oh, wow.
My surface area adjustment. You don't mind if I branch out on my own?
This is kind of a weird time to bring that up, don't you think?
I'm kidding, bro.
Okay. I'm watching you now, you good fella. Anyway, but I think, the one thing that it's almost hard to recap all of that episode with Mark.
There is one thing I do want to go back to though, which is,
I was just going to be like, I can't remember, like there was just like 1,000 lessons, but
no, here's a good one. Which I kind of tied into a bit, is when he talked about how some companies are really good at acquiring companies.
Was interesting. I picked up on that too.
Yeah. Because unfortunately we had a really good experience, I would say, when we were acquired, but it wasn't like anybody ever took us aside and sort of, said, hey, you don't have to keep doing this, but we got these other things and would you like to do like that?
Well, I even pushed him on it because I didn't believe him.
Yeah.
I said, well, how would you as a founder, if you're at Salesforce, because that was one of the legendary sort of acquire them and Oracle.
Yeah.
And he's like, how would, like, if you could go out and make it yourself, why wouldn't you go do it? Like, I know Salesforce has more resources and all those things. And he's like, well, the comp plan is definitely there too. And then I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
And I think that might be an organizational thing. Like if you think of an org chart, and if you're thinking about where you plug people into an org chart, and you've got you acquired this company, these two founders are stellar, and you just like, and you don't have a spot that you can stick them, then that's a tough one, especially if you're under, like remember we only had a short earn out with our acquisition, but companies that get acquired, they may have really stringent earn out requirements that other people's equity, is dependent on that, things like that. And I wonder if all of a sudden just taking these two founders and kind of putting them into this sort of side project or this innovative thing is just like misaligned with what has to happen in the short term. And maybe that's why maybe we weren't in that.
I think
that kind of situation.
If you don't acquire a ton of companies, it's an art and a science to get good at, like many things. And I think that the challenge is that if you don't do it very often, then you're gonna take founders and apply sort of what I would call like normal employee, senior employee rules to them.
Right.
You'll put them in a very specified, like specific role in the company.
Yeah.
And they'll have to take that on for better or for worse.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that a founder is somebody who's a generalist.
Yeah.
They're good at a lot of things that build businesses.
What were our titles at the end?
I was like VP of something, VP App Armor
sales.
Sales.
I know. I was VP something as well.
At Rave, I was VP App Armor Sales. And then at Motorola, I think I was App Armor Lead. I didn't have like director or VP or anything. It was just, I mean, titles didn't even make any sense to me at Motorola.
Yeah, exactly. But
I'm sure it's fine, by the way, Motorola. I don't want to start anything. But,
but there's an example that like we didn't even really like, we
couldn't
didn't
tell you.
fit in. We couldn't really
tell you what we did.
And that was kind of the structure, was like, okay, you got to go to here or there. It wasn't, I don't know if it was like, we didn't have enough exposure, I think, but I don't know if it was totally the right place for us to be in.
Like, let's bring this full circle. So if you're a founder and you're close to this path of selling your business, I think what I would have done that I didn't, and maybe because I didn't care or whatever, but I would take time to talk to the other founders that have been acquired by that same company, and see what their experience is like. And if that company doesn't have acquirers, like, I know you got to do it for the money to some extent. So don't get me wrong. If it's a good deal, and even if they've never acquired another company before, like, maybe you should do it as long as it makes sense and your lawyer says so and your accountants, and it's not legal advice. I'm not going to jail. But I think there's something to be said there where you need to understand what that experience is going to be like. Now we locked in things that matter to us, our people, our technology, and our customers. And those were the things we really cared about, aside from the number and all the other stuff for the business. But that last piece, I think, is really important, which is, what do they really like do with you, and what is your role going to be? What are you going to do there?
Yeah, there should have been maybe a fourth leg on that stool, right? Like, maybe there should have been like, what is the role of the founders post-acquisition?
I think just fundamentally, I assumed that it would be difficult for them to motivate us in the same way that we were motivated before.
Yeah.
Not that it would be impossible, but
Right.
I think it was kind of I didn't see it before.
Yeah.
Acquisition.
Yeah. So anyways, I guess advice to other founders when you're being acquired, definitely look after your staff, your customers, of course, and your technology. But I think the other piece that oft is forgotten is, what are you going to do? And, maybe there's an opportunity for you to stick around and do some really innovative things, and hopefully they're very lucrative as well, and they have benefits
They better
to
be.
your career.
If they're not lucrative, don't be there.
Right. Of course. And
well, no, but like, I don't know, like, I remember talking to you before we got acquired, and I said, you're going to find it really weird to work for these big companies. And you said, I'll be fine. I got, everything's going to work out. We're going to get money for the company, and they're going to care about this stuff. I'm like, okay. And we get there, and it was weird. It was weird for you.
Yeah.
It was weird for me too, but it was really weird for you.
Yeah. It was very odd to have a.
So I'm just saying, like, it's easy to fall into like a different rhythm. Just make sure it's going to work for you. Definitely talk to those other founders. But yeah, another really good insight from Mark, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Folks, that's another episode of Startup Different. Thank you, Chris, for joining me. And folks, we'll see you next week for another episode with another expert guest. Please check us out wherever you get your podcasts, of course. And check out our book, Startup Different, available on Amazon and all the other major online retailers. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.